Dr. Peter Navarro, you're here for a lot of things today. I want to talk about Fauci in a moment, but you're still putting up great reports. I think it was in the Washington Examiner or Washington Times the other day about the 2020 election. Let's start there, because there's a huge analysis out today from the federal government about census saying, hey, and President Trump's putting up and saying, hey, once again, I told you I won the 2020 election. I think there's 25,000. The Census Bureau is saying there's 24 or 25,000 foreign nationals who were not eligible to vote who voted in 2020. And that's just the surface. Yeah. That's just their first cut. Sir, walk us through it.
Yeah, let me give you the big picture here and what we're doing strategically. It starts with a bureaucracy, a deep state, which has withheld all sorts of information about that 2020 election going back from before that election was actually cast, right? And finally, President Donald John Trump has empowered John Solomon, RAV's own John Solomon, to go into government as a special employee and blow stuff up in there and get it out. So what John Solomon's doing, is systematically getting documents declassified and put up on whitehouse.gov at the election integrity site. And what I'm doing with John is every time something goes up, I'm going through it, fine-tooth comb, and getting it out as the message so that the people of America understand across a wide range of fronts just how compromised our election system is going into this November, and just how compromised it was going into 2020. So there's some things we can talk about. I love to talk about. We've got an article I had in the Examiner that shows how the Chinese Communist Party was effectively poised to steal the election in 2020, but maybe use the virus instead to exert its influence.
Hold it. Slow down. That's
just one article.
I want to focus on this. Don't get ahead. No, but
I'm just trying to give everybody all the good stuff from Maricopa and Georgia.
And we're going to get it all.
And this stuff
we got a whole hour. We got a whole hour. Can I get a full screen of Navarro? First of all, can I say something? Can I say something? Yeah. We have you from Pebble Beach all the time. You come down here in the suit. Yes. You look amazing. But I got to say something. Yes, 1 or 2 days down with your lovely bride Bonnie. You're there. You got a little sun workout. It's a gun show. You got the tight shirt on. Yeah. You look like a new man. You look 10 years younger. You look 10 years. You got energy. You're popping through the screen.
Lighting, man.
You're not as ornery.
The SIGs know how to put on a party. But I'm working my ass off. I want to assure everybody.
I know you are.
I'm doing the Fauci stuff. I'm doing this stuff. Okay. I'm getting jobs for America. But you go ahead, Admiral.
Hang on. In 2019, after 2 years of negotiations, Bob Lighthizer, Ambassador Lighthizer, and Peter Navarro came up with the deal, as you said at the time, it would take care of the 7 original sins of the Chinese Communist Party in the global economy. 2 years, and Li He, who was vice chairman, reported right to Wan Xishan and to Xi, had agreed to everything. They had a meeting the first time they had the One Belt, One Road meeting, and they said, listen, no offense, if we sign this document and agree to this deal, the foreign devils are going to control us. That would be the United States of America. And so they said they ripped it up in our face, said no way. And that's when they started thinking they had twofold, a bioweapon to take Trump. Yes. We can't take Trump. We can't take Lighthizer. We can't take Navarro. These guys are serious. The first president and a staff that has stood up to us, and they know everything we're doing. We can't fool them. We can't lie to us. They got everything marked off. We're actually increasing the military presence in the Western Pacific and Taiwan. These guys got us cornered. So we got 2 things. We must remove Trump. So number 1, we got a bioweapon, and we're going to release it. Number 2, we're going to actually influence the 2020 election. Now, on number 2, tell me how they did that according to your article, your analysis, and what John Solomon's showing us as far as part of the public record. Sir.
And what's so interesting here, Steve, is we're going to talk about 2 things, like why Tony Fauci should rot in prison and how China basically tried to steal the 2020 election. But they directly intersect. I mean, basically, this article in the Examiner lays out a situation where we know a number of things. We know that China developed the capabilities to go deep into our ballot box and manipulate it. And some of the things it did, for example, in 18 states, it gathered tens of millions of voter files with great detail, which then they would be able to massage in a way where they could message all sorts of things on platforms like TikTok and Facebook and this, that, and the other thing. And at the same time they were doing that, they had access to all the polling data, which showed where the vulnerabilities might be, not for Joe Biden, because he wasn't a target. They wanted to get Trump. And then we also know that the voting machines, which you and I never talked about, they were like last on our list of things that compromised the 2020 election. But it is also true that classified documents, now declassified, indicates that the voting machines themselves may well have been compromised and easily manipulated. So my reading of the chessboard is the Chinese had the capabilities going into 2020. They were going to try to steal that election for Biden using those capabilities. But at the same time, they were coming on another flank where they understood that if they injected a bioweapon, a virus, and caused a pandemic in the United States, that would likely be blamed on Trump, not China, and be another way of taking him down. Now, at this point, Jake Tapper's head's exploding, the left's head's exploding. But the problem with your head exploding, boys, is put your brains back in your head and just look at the declassified documents, which we now have, which tell us that all of this is not just plausible, but by Occam's razor, it's highly, highly probable. Effectively, Tony Fauci, through his bureaucracy, gave China the capabilities to create the bioweapon known as COVID-19 that either was accidentally or intentionally released from the Wuhan lab. So we know that happened over here. We know from numerous documents, Steve, from the IC, the intelligence community, in their assessments that says unequivocally China was preparing to interfere in the 2020 election, and they had massive capabilities to do it. There was nobody outside our borders who had more capabilities to go in and change the results of that election. So that's what the chessboard looks like. It's all fact. It's the power of Solomon, and you got nothing but crickets from the likes of Tapper and Ari Melber and John Berman. And if they dare say anything about it, it's like, tin hat stuff. It's all in the records. It's up on the White House site. It's government documents that were classified are now declassified. And you and I, Admiral, we're going to unpack this today and get this going.
Hang on. We didn't go to prison each for 4 months, federal prison each for 4 months, not to know what we're talking about. Peter Navarro, Dr. Peter Navarro, to the heart of it. This is why, I don't know, do we need Pulte back in DNI? Pulte and Solomon? What a team. The task force and Pulte. Short break. Navarro on the other side. Peter Navarro. Fauci. Are we all good? Peter, okay, good. Let's get somebody in my ear.
I'm
That's
here,
okay.
brother.
I can handle it.
I'm sitting here. I got the palm trees behind me. I got the logo, man.
It's amazing.
Pumping some iron in between, so I can look good for you.
The smartest thing you ever did was marrying Bonnie. I just want to say that, having known you now for about 15 years.
That's my girl.
Peter Navarro. Peter, you're working on something, and you have a better perspective of this than anything. When we shifted the war room from war room impeachment, which I had my co-hosts Jason Miller and Raheem Kassam. We shifted 1 hour of the show a day for a couple of weeks. Then we went to the whole show, War and Pandemic, on 20 January 2020, because we knew something big was happening coming with this pandemic. Dr. Stephen Hatfield was the first I'd reached out to. I said, give me the smartest guy that's ever been associated with the government about this. They said it was Stephen Hatfield. He came in as our consultant. He was on the first show. A couple days after we started on the War and Pandemic, there was a quite contentious meeting in the Situation Room. I think it was on 23 January 2020, where I'd heard I said there was a throwdown in the Situation Room between Navarro and some guy from NIH. Talk to us about it.
See, this is why I wrote this book. It's called Why Fauci Should Rot in Prison. And it dates back to the first time I met the little SOB. And what motivates the book is the release of his private diary, right? The 1,100-page diary. When you juxtaposition it against my own diary during the pandemic, it's the most amazing friggin' story you ever seen, because his private diary, coupled with what I was doing, basically makes the unequivocal case that that son of a bitch should rot in prison for the rest of his life and die, by the way, penniless. Okay? And so here's the setup, right? I'm seeing what nobody else in the West Wing is seeing except President Trump. I'm seeing, and by the way, the War Room was right there in terms of raising my awareness about this. So I want to tip my hat to you guys. It was clear to me that something really bad was brewing in Wuhan, and a pandemic was likely on the way early. And this was months before that thing was declared anyway. So the boss calls me the night before this meeting in the sit room and says, we need the travel ban. Navarro, go do it. You know how to do it. You know what to do. And I walk into the Situation Room, the iconic Situation Room in the West Wing. Anytime you go in there, it's a serious matter. And you got like little Mick Mulvaney sitting like little Lord Fauntleroy chairing the meeting with his little gavel there. And I mean, I got like Stephen Bagan from State, a globalist. I got Azar there preening from HHS. I got the Redfield, who's the head of the CDC. I'm looking around, I'm thinking this is going to be a tough sell. And then there's this guy sitting right across from me with these little round glasses, didn't know who he was, didn't know his excrement didn't stink, didn't know he walked on water. I just didn't know anything about him, but he's sitting right there, Steve. And within 2 minutes into that meeting, I'm in a shout down, throw down with this guy. Still didn't know he walked on water. And he's telling me, Steve, over and over, travel bans don't work. And I'm saying, wait a minute. It's like 20,000 Chinese are coming in every day to our airports. There's an infection over there. They're burning bodies. There's smoke in the air. You're telling me that that's not going to put Americans in risk. He kept saying travel bans don't work. And so we get to the end of the meeting, and Mulvaney sits there and says, well, I guess we have a consensus here. We're not going to enforce the travel ban. And I said to Mick, Mick, you're out of your mind. There's absolutely no consensus here. Pottinger finally pipes up. He's at the NSC, that Matt Pottinger, who used to be a good guy in China Hawk, but you know what he did. He pipes up and said, well, the NSC supports the travel ban, Mick. So Mulvaney had to adjourn the meeting, leave it in doubt. That night I go and write this memo that says, like, millions are going to die if we don't start doing stuff like the travel ban. It's cost us like $1 trillion. The memo was absolutely right. I sent it to everybody. Bottom line, a few days later, Fauci flips, and he's leading the charge for the travel ban and taking credit for it in the Oval, okay? But what's interesting with his diary, and this is what fired me up, he's like just telling the world that I'm wrong saying that Fauci opposed the travel ban. And then privately, he's writing that he's against it, in several entries, right? And then I read this thing. And the thing about why Fauci should rot in prison, and folks, I'm giving you the money back guarantee, okay? Read this book, buy it now. You don't like it, you don't believe it, I'll give you your money back. Because this SOB belongs in prison, and he's indicted not just by my diary, but by his. Steve, on everything, on the lockdowns, I fought him. I fought him on the antivirals like ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. I fought him on the travel ban. I fought him on everything he stood for, the masks. And every time I was right, the economist, every time he was right, the supposed medical professional. And it's all in the diary. And he never admits to any of his mistakes. He just adopts new positions and pretends like he never had the old positions. And it's all there. And it shows you, Steve, in why Fauci must rot in prison, how Tony Fauci, okay, the godfather of the pandemic, in my judgment, the guy who basically paid for, from his American taxpayer money, the EcoHealth Alliance, to offshore gain-of-function technology to a lab in Wuhan that was a dual-use civilian and military lab to teach them essentially how to put viruses in bats that were harmless to humans, and voila, things became really deadly to humans. And it's all in this book. I go walk through every kind of thing. And it's built, Steve, it's a beautiful thing. It's built like a court case. It's essentially a legal thriller. It starts with an opening argument, and it closes with exactly how to prosecute the case. Every single charge that you're going to put against Fauci, what courts you're going to do it in. And when it's all said and done, I believe this book will be the blueprint for every AG around the country, as well as folks at DOJ, as to how to go about to take this guy down. And Tony, I'm saying this right to you, and you can put it in your new diary. We're coming after you. And I'm in his diary. It's like close to 60 times. He didn't like me. He didn't like you, Steve, because we called him on his crap. And there it is. It's up on Amazon. Let's give it a run.
No, this is it's a incredibly important document, because not simply for the midterms and the afterwards. This has to be done for this republic. We can never allow a monster like this again. Any of these mini monsters, mini me's over there that think they're ever going to have the ability to just run roughshod over everything, particularly on this medical side and with big pharma. This is why this book's so important. You lay it out as only Peter Navarro can lay it out, step by step. And the important thing is that Navarro was taking this guy on from the very beginning. Remember, the quarantine or the travel ban was simply, we knew it was exploding in Wuhan. They allowed travel to Italy. What they were saying, hey, if you come here to the United States, first of all, we are limited coming here overall, but if you come here, you got to be in quarantine. First time that ever happened, Peter. Well, you got to be in quarantine for 2 weeks to check it out. It was just basic precautions for the American people. Fauci fought like crazy not to have that, and then flipped when it had to go, when obviously the public, it was so logical that you didn't want China spreading this virus here, right? Then Fauci flipped. You can see it all. Fauci must rot.
Forward by Stephen K. Bannon. Forward by the Admiral.
The two inmates.
Right. Fauci must rot
Peter,
in
stick
prison.
around. We got a lot more to talk about on this and the economy, manufacturing, all of it. President Trump's case to the American people in the midterm elections. We're going to take a short commercial break. We're going to return live from our West Palm Beach studio with Dr. Peter Navarro next. Okay, Dr. Navarro, we had these elections in Florida. You got people should realize the DSA can put a happy face on it. I mean, it's a very compelling candidate that won really a stunning victory over Vindman, I think Vindman's one of the biggest creeps around. We know him from the Ukraine days and everything we did on the about the 2020 election, all the lies he told on worm impeachment. When we first started, Vindman was one of the big villains we had. Is such a bad guy, he and his twin brother. But he got blown out last night, having raised a ton of money against her. One of the arguments, I'll get into data centers, all that later, which data centers is huge. But, Peter, people keep talking about the economy and affordability. We have said on this show from the beginning, it was Scott Bessent's theory of the case, and your guys' theory of the case. There were converging forces and policies taken to make sure that we had economic growth, forcing functions to get high value-added manufacturing jobs back to the United States, return America as a manufacturing superpower. Let's leave aside the fact the excursion we've had in the Middle East for a moment. Is that plan working? Because that is, and I tell people all the time, they go, well, all these candidates in Congress are all MAGA, and he's endorsing all these guys in the Senate. I said, is that true? I said, does the Blair and these guys asked the first question, what do you think of Trump's tariffs? Are you for tariffs and protectionism or not? And trust me, 90% of the Republican Party is not. When you scratch them, you got Milton Friedman right there. And that argument is not going to be good enough anymore, folks. Watch Fishback. Fishback not just got 10% on like $1 million. More importantly, he won all the college. I think he won the Florida State area and all the university. All the young people are resonating with his message of no H-1B visas and bringing manufacturing jobs back here to the United States. So, Dr. Navarro, since you're one of the architects, you're one of the, President Trump's, I guess, the architect, you're one of the engineers in building it. Where do we stand with all this? And are we going to have a case that can be sold to the American people that they will understand and look around in their lived experience, say, yeah, I see what Peter's talking about, and I agree with it, sir?
See, let's you and I go back in the time machine to Trump Tower, New York in 2016. You're about to engineer the greatest political victory in presidential history. I'm the economic and trade advisor. We had a very clear vision. Like the centerpiece of our base was the blue-collar Americans who shower when they come home, the old Reagan Democrats that we were going to pull in. And we had a four-pronged plan, basically, to get the economy out of the new normal 1% GDP growth rut it had sunk into in the Obama days. And it was the deregulation, it was the tax cuts, it was the strategic energy dominance, and it was, of course, the fair trade, which would go through tariffs. Okay? And we implemented hang on. And a confrontation on economics and unrestricted warfare with the Chinese Communist Party. This is one of the reasons you were brought in the campaign, because you're an expert in trade, but you were particularly an expert in trade with China and China hawk. And President Trump talked to the American people for the first time and had a conversation with someone who's a businessman and knows capital markets and knows trade, who had been on the Lou Dobbs side of this ledger forever. So it wasn't like he just grafted onto it. He knew this to the core of his being, and that's why we pierced the blue wall of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Sir, the floor is yours again. And secure borders, of course, was a vital part of all of that. So we executed flawlessly. We took on the Chinese. We got our growth back up to historical rates rather than the new normal. And we proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that tariffs don't cause inflation, because we put substantial tariffs on the Chinese that even Biden kept. And we got that steady growth. So fast forward now into a new administration. I am back at my old job as the director of the Office of Trade and Manufacturing Policy. And we basically doing two things that are creating the biggest investment boom in manufacturing that has ever happened in the country. We've got the big, beautiful bill. The essence of that for manufacturing is 100% expensing when anybody puts a new factory in the U.S. That's a tremendous, tremendous incentive to build factories in America. And then we have the tariff wall itself, which defends and Trump's mantra that, hey, if you don't want big tariffs, just build it here. So we got something like $19 trillion of committed funds coming in, right? So the media spin has been in the early months of the administration, well, manufacturing said it's never coming back. We don't see anything. But what I do, Steve, is going back to what I used to do and when I was in the university days as a macro guy, is my job now, in addition to all the things I do, is when the big economic reports come out, you know, the durable goods, the ISM manufacturing, CPI, PPI, GDP, productivity, all of that stuff. My job is to look through it and see what it's telling us. And what it's telling us, Steve, is unequivocal. We're having a construction boom, okay? And the construction boom is basically driven by the tariffs, and it's driven by the tax code and 100% expensing. And what much of the construction is building the factories which will manufacture the goods, which will make our supply chains strong and resilient here at home for national and economic security. We're seeing that boom. Now, it's taken a little while for the manufacturing to catch up to that, because you can't have a manufacturing job in a factory until it's constructed. But starting at about 6 months ago, we've seen a very clear upward trend in manufacturing as measured by the ISM Manufacturing Index. It finally got above the magic number of 50 about 6 months ago. It hadn't hit that since August of 22 in the Biden years. And it's not only gotten over 50, it's steadily trending up. And it's got like different components in it. But the last report we had was the best news, because finally the employment component of the ISM Manufacturing Index was in positive territory. So we're not only making the factories, it's not just like overtime and things like that going on. People are being new hires. So everything we're seeing in the data here, Steve, is that we're on a deflationary trend in the core. It's coming down like 2.5% now. We're looking at the different elements. We're having really good news in certain elements of food, for example, which is really important. Auto insurance is plummeting in terms of costs. Used cars, things like that. All sorts of good things in the data. The obvious problem we have from what you call a little excursion over there in the Middle East is in the non-core, which is the oil and the gasoline. And the big issue that I'll be looking at over the coming months is whether that non-core exogenous shock bleeds into the core itself, which would be, of course, trouble. But so far, we are not seeing that. We're seeing a strong manufacturing base being formed. We're seeing deflationary trends in the economy. We're seeing productivity going up. We're seeing real wages go up for blue-collar Americans again. But it's a tough sell when it says $4 per gasoline. The Democrats are hitting us. Everybody in the legacy media is saying tariffs cause inflation when they don't. And again, my job is to help message the truth, and the campaign's job is to help to do that. And it's going to be a battle all the way in to November. But that's where things stand. And I'm standing on strong and stable ground now with respect to what the data is telling me. And Steve, nobody covers this better than the War Room. I mean, you guys have the pulse of the economy globally. You look at it every day. Your Dollar Empire treatise is remarkable. But I'm telling you, from the Trump White House, we are implementing the 4 plan. The deregulation. Zeldin's doing a great job.
Okay, let me ask you about this. You and Besant and Hassett, you guys have full-time jobs. People should know Peter is one of these guys that is a 15 to 18-hour day guy, 7 days a week. I mean, he's like a gym rat. Yes. You got to throw him out of the gym because they're all the time. Besant's working nonstop. Hassett's working nonstop. You guys have full-time jobs. we do a good job here because obviously I understand economy and finance and capital markets, and this audience needs to understand that because that's what empowers them, and other news shows don't want to cover it. That being said, what do we need to do? First off, it's going to be the lived experience, but I mean, just walking through that process and talking about the manufacturing jobs coming back, why are we, it seems like the reality of this and the work of it is not being doubled down with a messaging program that has tons of surrogates that are carpet bombing, and not Fox Business or the War Room, okay? But I'm talking about, I want to see it on Morning Joe. I want to see it on TV. Squawk Box. I want to see it at Squawk. I want to see Jim Cramer's nose rubbed in this every morning, right? I want to see it on Stephanie Rule's show. You guys should should be booked on Stephanie Rule's show every other, and she'll take it. I mean, that's an economic show on. Well,
I don't know if she'll take it because I've tried to get I text Jake. Hey, Jake, you want to talk about this? They're doing the same bullshit they were doing before. They keep us out. But let me say one thing. I got a metaphor for you.
Yep.
Yeah, I got a metaphor for you.
Go ahead.
So, and I use this with the press folks. I say, look, this is like a song, okay? And the problem is that the news cycle itself, the things that distract us every day from the economic message, is like the melody. But the economic stuff is like the bass line. And it's got to be played every single day. And what we need to do more and more of and better is make sure that our underlying macro message is played across the diaspora, the media, every single day, rather than have our people get distracted and play firefighter on whatever's happened around the globe, particularly in the Strait of Hormuz and elsewhere. So that's what I'm advocating. We're going into November. I'm doing what I can every day to put these videos out and op-eds and this, that, and the other thing. But if we're not talking about the economy every day and educating people on exactly what our plan is and how it is working, then we're not doing what we should be doing. So that's kind of where we're at. And Steve, it's like, it's okay to go on CNN and MS, whatever they're calling it now, and all of that. But it's also true that local and regional TV that you get through the Sinclairs is really a great way to do it. And what RAV does is good because we reach a different audience. I'm pleased to learn that RAV now has a whole Spanish network. But this is my plan. It's like the baseline is the macro message. We need to have a good bass player every day playing that message out as other things happen in the world that grab the news cycle.
Your father would be very proud of you, taking his profession and putting it out to an
He was a professional musician, yes. Thank you for remembering that. You pulled that out of your back pocket there, brother. Good for you.
He'd be very proud of you, young Navarro. Okay, short commercial break. Dr. Peter Navarro live in the West Palm Beach studios of RAV in a moment. Dr. Navarro, I really appreciate you taking time away today to do this. It's been magnificent. I want to spend a couple of minutes at the end because this Fauci situation has to be dealt with. And this is not even about Tony Fauci personally. We need to remedy this situation so it can never happen again to the American people. Walk me through the book, what's in it, and why should people go get it, sir?
Just a quick personal reflection on Bretton Woods. Remember how you mentioned my dad was a musician? When I was about 10 years old, my father was the house band at Bretton Woods, where that whole conference was held up in Mount Washington. And I don't know if it got into my DNA, but it is kind of cool. We spent the whole summer there at Bretton Woods. Wow. Saying, I don't know what it means, but it is interesting. Let's talk about why Tony Fauci should rot in prison. Throw that cover up there, Denver. I'm asking everybody in the war room not to just buy this book, but buy several of them for your friends. We want to rocket this to the top of the bestseller list, and we want to do that because if everybody reads this book, there's no way that Tony Fauci can keep out of prison. Because what I do, and Stephen K. Bannon's got the foreword to this, and it's quite good. What I do in the book is explain exactly how a technology capable of creating a virus that could end all mankind originated in Tony Fauci's shop here in America and was sent over to a Chinese lab through intermediaries at U.S. taxpayers' expense to a lab which was not just a civilian lab, but also one where the People's Liberation Army of China studied bioweapons, and who knows what happened there, but likely created bioweapons there. And that's where that story starts. That's why I've always said from day one that Tony Fauci is the likely godfather of the pandemic, because he started. And I show you this. It's like the most fascinating thing to me is how early in the pandemic, Fauci convenes like 12 of the most eminent scientists in the world to figure out what the hell's going on in Wuhan. 10 of them tell Fauci that thing probably came from the lab in Wuhan. And the only 2 who didn't tell him that were guys who were deeply involved in gain-of-function research and didn't presumably want to jeopardize the gravy train they were on. Fauci was told that. And the problem, of course, for Tony Fauci is once he put 2 and 2 together, oops, I might have funded that. He did not want to be blamed. And that's where the great cover-up began. And I walked through all of the Tony Fauci's that he, the mask Fauci, the vaccine Fauci, the booster Fauci, the miscarriage Fauci. Yeah. I'd go through the whole thing, and at the end, which is the payoff, starts with an opening argument like a lawyer, ends with a strategy to nail this son of a bitch, both in state and federal courts. Yeah. He will go down. If we get this book out as a bestseller, and Tapper's got to cover it, Melber's got to cover it, ABC, The View, every one of those people, I will call out as enabling Tony Fauci, lying to the American public and ignoring exactly what you and I said, Steve, that thing came from the lab and it killed Americans and it had a political dimension to it.
Yep. It's a bioweapon, Chinese CCP bioweapon. Peter, where do they go for Peter to get all this content, all your articles? Give me the one-stop shop. We got to bounce. Amazing.
Go, Amazon, go right there. Go, why Fauci must rot in prison. Go to Amazon, buy a bunch of them. And then PeterNavarro.com, of course, is the intersection for everything. You got X, you got Getter, you got Truth, you got Instagram, you got Facebook, you got the Substack. Subscribe to that. You got Navarro Express, the podcast. We're trying to get this message out through all the different platforms. And as I said earlier, Steve, this is a song. The melody is the news cycle, but we got to always play the bass line. The bass line is what's going on with the economy and Trumpnomics and how that's making Americans better off. Our blue-collar MAGA Americans are getting better off because of what we're doing. And God help us if those DSA folks get in charge of this economy and political system and society.
We're going
good to see you, Admiral. You're looking good,
Dr.
buddy.
Navarro. Thank you, sir. You're looking great. You're magnificent. What a gun show. A gun show by Dr. Peter Navarro. Thank you, Bonnie, for the gun show today.